Now, McCain's running mate, Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, well, she's expected to speak tomorrow, of course, but, well, here we can tell us what to expect as this convention tries to now resume its normal activities, is our own Dick Morris, author of the best-selling book, Fleeced. Dick, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Well, I got to tell you, one of the things that has emerged in this campaign, in my view, is Sarah Palin has been now in the public spotlight for 5 days. There have been tougher and harder questions that have been asked relentlessly by a biased news media about her daughter than about Barack Obama, who's been running for 19 months.
A man would never have had to go through this. That her husband was DWI 20 years ago, that her daughter's having a kid, that there's a fight going on between her sister and her husband, and the husband tasered the kid, as they did, would never be asked about a man. It's the deep sexism that runs through our society.
What is going to be the net result of that?
Well, right now, the whole election hangs in the balance. If McCain has to get rid of Palin, get rid of McCain. He's dead. McGovern never recovered from getting rid of Eagleson. The statement about...
Why are we even talking about that? She's done nothing wrong.
Absolutely. None of this is about her. It's about her daughter, her husband, her sister's husband, her dog, and her cat.
But what my point is that I've been making the case that journalism is dead in this country in 2008. 19 months he's been running for president. He hasn't had to answer a single question about why he's friends with heirs and all these other questions.
Let me go back to...
And they're asking tougher questions about a 17-year-old girl.
But let me go back to what you asked. I think this is going to be a huge win for McCain.
Explain.
Because the important thing about a VP these days is not that he carries a specific state, but that he explains to the voters who the presidential candidate is. So that when Bill Clinton chose Al Gore, and I was a key part of that decision, his whole rationale was, now people will understand that I'm a new generation, a new force, and so on. So in choosing Palin, McCain emphasizes his battle against corruption, his battle against the insiders in Washington, his fight against government spending. And Palin is going to emphasize all that stuff in her speech tomorrow.
Let me ask you this.
Voters are going to love that speech.
We've learned a lot.
And once they love that speech, they're going to love McCain for selecting her, and even love him more for standing by her.
We have learned that women's groups are not really about women's rights. They're about liberal women's groups. Now, I find this amazing because I look at Sarah Palin, and I'm very impressed at her background, her life experience. She has far more executive experience than Barack Obama, the community organizer, has. You know, but she made a choice, for example, to have a Down syndrome baby, a special needs child. She made that choice. She made the choice to have 5 kids. She made the choice to work.
But what I find incredible about this is that's not why she's running for vice president. She's running for vice president because Alaska is controlled by 2 guys, Murkowski and Stevens. Stevens and his son, Murkowski and his daughter. The daughter's the senator, the father is the governor, and then Stevens and his son is a lobbyist. She confronted that establishment. She got the state Republican Party chairman to resign, the attorney general to resign, and she beat the governor in a 3-way Republican primary, and since then, she's cleaned house top to bottom, cut the state budget by 15%.
I want to ask you,
that's why she should
I want to ask you about polls.
And when she talks about that record, people are going to love her for it.
I want to ask you about polls in just a second, but this is not about Sarah Palin. I think the issue here is about John McCain. Was she vetted properly? They spoke on the phone once. They met once. Apparently, McCain's team went to Alaska the day before he announced her as the candidate. What did they know? How much did they know? What are they not prepared for? Was the vetting process, was this an instinctive, sudden decision because Hillary Clinton was on the Democratic ticket? It's about McCain, not Palin.
What's vetting supposed to be? You find out her public record. You go through her finances. You go through her taxes. You go through her any criminal involvement. You go through any accusations that have been made. You go through how she does. Do you ask, was your husband DWI? Do you ask?
Well, I'm just, by the way, Barbara Bush walking in as we are talking to you. That is Barbara Bush on the floor of the convention, just behind us right now.
Do you ask, is your daughter pregnant? Do you ask questions like that?
As former President Bush and Barbara Bush,
George Bush 41
entered, as you can hear in the background, a lot of loud
as they enter the hall, you can hear the reaction.
Recognize that the former president has entered the convention center here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Obviously, warm greeting for the former president.
That is, of course, the reaction, as Sean just mentioned, to Mr. and Mrs. Bush, George Bush 41.
I thought they were
Alan, I
clapping
actually
for
thought
me.
that
No,
was
they're
for you,
not
Alan.
clapping for me or for Dick Morris, although they'd be more likely to be clapping for Morris than for Colmes. And there you hear more of the reaction as the crowd gets their eyes upon George H.W. Bush, 41, and you can see the reaction of the entire arena here as we continue talking to Dick Morris. This is about, was a reactive decision to what the Democratic ticket did not do, rather than, if he wanted to be a maverick, if he wanted to show he was bucking the establishment, he could have picked Joe Lieberman, who you supported as a choice above Sarah Palin.
But it's his choice, and there was a fundamental reason for doing Palin and not Lieberman. Lieberman was illustrative of McCain's tough stance on terror and his ability to work with other parties. But Palin is indicative, David Brooks said this in his Times column today, was indicative of McCain's battle against domestic corruption, the corruption that bedevils Washington and bedeviled Juneau, Alaska, and she cleaned that up. And when you talk about vetting, that's what you should vet somebody on, not whether their daughter is pregnant or not.
I agree with that, but I supposedly McCain
What are we
knew
back
about
in
that.
the Henry VIII reign with this public issue?
I think Barack Obama is right that family issues are family issues, but there are issues of judgment that get raised just as they were raised. They question Barack Obama's religion, his faith, his church, his
pastor. He's very pious, Obama, about all this. But where the heck do you think all of the negatives that are being dumped on Palin one after another came from? They obviously come from the Democratic Party. So he's all holier than thou, but his negative research boys are working overtime.
Look, it's often the surrogates who do the dirty work, just like for McCain. The 527 groups, the surrogates have said the things McCain said he wouldn't say, and they do it with his blessing.
He's above all of that.
All right, let's talk about the polls here, Dick. Real moment. Actually, we got to go in just a second.
Break, but we got a lot coming up.
We'll talk about it more.
The president in just a few minutes is going to be
in just a moment. We'll get into the polls and a lot more, because Dick, we got to take a break here. And